everyone. I'm here to talk about ways that you can celebrate the season of Beltane. So, hi, I'm Lou, the Rocker Witch. I teach tarot, astrology, and witchcraft. Welcome if you're new here, and if you have come back, welcome back to those of you who have watched me for a while. So, I'm going to talk about the season of Beltane and just some different ways that you can celebrate it in a realistic way. You will see a lot of videos where it's talking about, making a maypole and doing all these elaborate things that, quite frankly, a lot of us don't have access to. For some of us, it's time. We're working or we're working several jobs and we don't have time to make a maypole in our backyard, nor do we have the resources. I think that one of the problems in sort of our especially online when it comes to things like paganism and witchcraft, there does tend to be a lot of focus on consumerism, aesthetics, and also a little bit of snobbery as well. So, it's great if you could do those things, and no shade to anybody that has the time or the resources to do those kind of things. That's awesome. But just realizing that not everybody does. And when, if you are a newer pagan or you don't have a lot of time or a lot of resources, it can be kind of discouraging to see all these sort of elaborate festivals and rituals and altars online and think oh, well, I can't participate because I don't have those kind of things. And I just want to tell you that that's just not true. And you can celebrate things in your own way. I think the other thing that's important to realize that there's time constraints, there's economic constraints, but there's also things like where we live in the world that doesn't always match up with the traditional Wiccan celebrations, which are really based largely out of British customs. And, we don't all have the weather of Britain, right? We all live in different parts of the world. For example, Beltane here, and I might show a clip at the end of this video just showing you what spring looks like right now. Early spring here is not like spring right now, what's going on in England, right? There's still little lumps of snow around. The grass is brown. There's no leaves on the trees. But we know it's coming. There's the trees have buds on them. The birds are returning. So I still celebrate Beltane. I still celebrate May Day, as to me it's like the beginning of spring. It's like spring is here. It's starting. Flowers are going to come even if they're not here yet, and that's still celebrating that, but in my own way. And I think it's important that you adapt it to where you are in the world and also to your life as well and what it looks like right now, rather than trying to make it fit like something that says in the book or what somebody's showing you on TikTok or on Instagram, right? Really important. So one of the themes that comes up for Beltane is flowers. In lots of parts of the world, we are seeing early spring flowers. Places have things like daffodils and tulips and starting to get some dandelions, things like that. And so if you are in a part of the world where there are flowers, that can be a really great way to celebrate, even just bringing some into your home, either picking flowers or, buying a little pot of flowers and bringing them into your home. If your garden, it's time to, it's early enough to, start a garden. You can do that as all ways to celebrate sort of that, flowers and the fertility of the season. Now, for example, where I live, obviously, no flowers around yet. They're coming. But, maybe I, get a little flower from the grocery store down the street or something. Or, making flower crowns is another way to celebrate the season that is very common. And again, I do not have flowers around to pick to make a flower crown. We're not all super crafty. And so, going to a craft store or the dollar store and buying some artificial flowers and making a crown can be a craft that you do for this time of year. If you're not crafty, you can also buy them if you have the ability to buy them. There's also, I see some snobbery when it comes to stuff like people going to places like dollar stores and getting candles or plastic flowers or whatever. But not everybody has the resources to go, to buy really expensive things. And they often dress up this snobbery in saying oh, well, that's bad for the environment and, it's bad, economically. And the thing is yeah, it's not great for the environment, but not everybody has the same resources as someone else. It's not a black and white issue. And I wish people would be a little bit more compassionate, especially in times where, people are having economic difficulties. So, if the dollar store is what's available to you and helps you to participate in the season in a way that's meaningful to you, I don't think it's on anyone else to sort of judge somebody for that. I think that's really important. So, bringing in things like flowers or like making flower crowns, whether they're real or artificial, can be a really nice way to celebrate the season. Flower crowns, there's always been at these May Day festivals, the crowning of the May Queen with like, a flower crown and people wearing them and things like that. So it's very much part of that this season and something that you can do to celebrate. The nice thing too with something like an artificial flower crown is that it doesn't wilt, and you can keep it and you can wear it, on other occasions. So that's like one of the benefits of making one that's a little bit more artificial. Another common way to celebrate this season, you'll see lots of pictures of maypoles and, people going to big festivals and things. So if you're able to do that and you have the economic means to do that, that's awesome, that's amazing. But not everybody does. First of all, not everybody lives in an area where it's safe to be out as a pagan. Not everybody lives in an area where there's enough pagans to really have a festival of any kind. And often some of these festivals are expensive, right? Like you have to travel to get to them. There's things like accommodations, all of those kinds of things. So again, if you can do that, that's amazing, but not everybody has that option too. For some people, they're not able to, have a maypole. Like, I don't know anybody who has a maypole. I think, there used to be here where I live a local, it wasn't even really festival. It was like a day at the park, and somebody would often like make a maypole, or a group of people would make one and bring it. But we didn't have one every single year. And so some years people would just tie ribbons to a tree as a way to sort of decorate it and bring in that sense of sort of that maypole kind of vibe. I've been lucky enough, like I said, to go to some of these things where we did have a maypole and we were able to dance a maypole, which was a really lovely and wonderful experience. And I'm really grateful to the people who took the time to like make a maypole, because it's a lot of work and effort, and then also bringing it as well because it's huge. So I appreciate that. And if you do have opportunities to do that, that's great. But just realize like not everybody does. And if you don't have the ability to, dance around a maypole, that's totally okay as well. Another theme for the Beltane season is the Fae, celebrating and honoring the Fae. So, if it's nicer out, you can do things like make a little fairy garden, or even just putting out like little images of fairies to like honor them can be a really nice way to do that. You don't have to go all elaborate. Again, if you want to, you obviously can. But I think even like doing something like doing a fairy card reading can be a really great way to celebrate the season in a more sort of like economic way, or especially if you don't have a lot of time. There's lots of different fairy cards out there, and I know that, you may already have some. I love the Brian Froud fairies, I think are the closest to way I see fairies, but there's lots of other fairy cards out there that are available. And I think it really helps to kind of get into the mood and get into the spring season. Another common theme for Beltane is bonfires. So, if you have the ability to have a little bonfire out in your backyard, if you have a backyard, that's a really great way to celebrate this season. Here, it's still kind of chilly, but it's definitely like you could have a bonfire for sure if you wanted to. You might live in an apartment where that is just not an option. Like, lighting a bonfire is dangerous. You can't do that. But, even lighting a candle, like lighting like a bigger candle, can be the symbol of a bonfire. So it's more about the symbolism, I think. And if you can, like I said, have that bonfire, that's great. Now, one of the traditions is burning of like the sacred woods in the bonfire. So some traditions, it's three sacred woods. Why can I not say that? Like oak, ash, and thorn. Some it's 9 sacred ones, and it depends. Like I've read different ones where it's different sacred woods. But these woods they're British, they're like European based. So, for example, we don't have hawthorn here. We don't. I've seen hawthorn in England. There's no hawthorn here. It just doesn't grow in this climate. There's certain woods that we just don't have. So you have to think about what is sacred in your area. So, for example, here, trees like poplar and maple are more common. And so, maybe that's something you can incorporate into that. So, again, if you have the luxury and the time of having a bonfire, you can incorporate those woods. If you don't, one thing I can see doing to incorporate the idea of like sacred trees is, doing an Ogham reading or learning about the Ogham, learning about them. This is the tree alphabet. Very much, it's kind of like runes, but they're Celtic and they're associated with trees. And so maybe learning about them or doing an Ogham reading can be a way to incorporate the season. I think too, even just going for a walk, like going for a walk in the park, if you happen to live in a rural area, going for a walk in nature, connecting in that way and just seeing the changes of the season and seeing the trees and how they're coming to life, like whether it's, they're going to have the leaves on them or whether it's buds like here, just sort of looking at the trees and looking and seeing like what trees are in your area can be a really great way to celebrate this season as well. Um, Another topic that often comes up for Beltane is divination. Working, doing some divination work. And we've kind of talked about that with like fairy readings or like Ogham readings, but can it just be a really good time to do like a big tarot reading, do a spread for like what's going to happen between now and Samhain, which is on the other side of the wheel. Also doing some dream work, asking for some dreams can be a really good way to celebrate the season. So, I think, it's important to remember that this time of year, we often think of Samhain as being very much connected with divination and, with psychic kind of development and things like that. But Beltane is on the opposite side of the wheel, and it also has that connection too. Some people have believed that there was like a version of kind of the wild hunt at this time of year, which is connected with Samhain. Others believe that this is the time when the spring fairies come out, and that Samhain's when like the winter fairies come out. So there's this connection with kind of like the other world that's going on at this time. Some people see Samhain as connected with the dead, and Beltane is connected with the Fae. So both of these are connected with kind of these otherworldly thinning of the veil type energy, and that can be a really great time to do some divination. So great time to, whatever your favorite type of divination is, whether that's like tarot cards or Lenormand or Oracle or pendulum or whatever, it can be a really great time to break out those kind of things. Now, on my Patreon at Kevin level, we're actually doing a spell for our spell of the month is for blessing divination tools and also developing psychic ability. So you can check that out if you're interested in that. But I hope that all of these things have given you some ideas of budget-friendly ways and time-friendly ways that you can incorporate into the season, that you can celebrate the season. I think it's really important to give ideas that are realistic and that are, geared towards people who maybe, like me, a little more working class, don't have a ton of time, don't have a ton of money. And I think that's a lot of us. Most of us do not have elaborate maypoles in our backyard, that's for sure. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me. You guys are the best. Again, if you want to check out my Patreon, it's in the links below. Also, my Etsy shop as well. If you want to get a reading for Beltane, you can check that out too. But just thanks for watching and thanks for commenting and being here. I really appreciate it. And as always, peace and love and rock and roll.